West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël.
There are only two portions of the Constitution that reference the Speaker of the House. Article 1, Section 2 states that the House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment. And the 25th Amendment describes the Speaker's role in presidential succession if the president is incapacitated as the second in line to the role. And then there is what you might call the Nancy Pelosi rule, which is the Speaker should never bring something to the floor that doesn't have the votes. Republicans don't seem to know either of those things. Today, they wasted another entire day fighting amongst themselves, only to arrive right back where they started, speakerless. Lacking the necessary 217 votes, Jim Jordan temporarily backed off his speaker quest, agreeing to get behind a proposal to empower interim Speaker Patrick McHenry until January 3rd, while Jordan would remain Speaker designate. The closed-door meeting went so well, former Speaker Kevin McCarthy reportedly screamed at Matt Gaetz while another member lunged at Gaetz. The effort to empower McHenry and have some semblance of a functional House fell apart among Republicans, in part because it would require Democratic votes.
I think this is the wrong thing to do. Our Republican voters worked very hard to give us our majority, and this conference is broken.
I worry that it might actually exacerbate the divide we see in the caucus right now.
It's absurd. It's the biggest FU to Republican voters I've ever seen.
So in the Groundhog Day fashion, Jim Jordan says the plan for now is to pursue a third House vote tomorrow, even as he continues to lose support and opposition is hardening from members who are getting literal death threats for not supporting him. Plus pressure from Sean Hannity. So here we are, 16 days without a speaker, less than a month from a government shutdown with two wars raging that require American funding that cannot get processed because the Republican-run House is paralyzed. Good times. Joining me now, it's Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland, the ranking Democrat on the House Oversight Committee. I want to first ask you, I like to use your role as a constitutional scholar and take advantage of that because I could get to nerd out with you. But Speaker McHenry, that's the Speaker for now, McHenry told Republicans at a closed-door meeting that he would resign as Speaker pro tempore if his colleagues pushed him to bring legislation to the floor without taking a vote to explicitly expand his powers. Are there any enumerated powers, and is it even legitimate to expand the powers of a temp speaker?
Well, we are in unknown territory here. No party has ever pushed the House of Representatives to this kind of chaos and uncertainty before. Article 1 does say that each House can define the rules of its own proceedings. So theoretically, in addition to the textual provisions that you invoked that refer specifically to a speaker, we could create a speaker pro tem, we could create a moderator, we could create an MC for that matter. But then, of course, the question is, what is the authority of that person? Because has the House of Representatives itself acted legitimately if we don't have a speaker? And nobody knows. And of course, that might have to be tested in court. So they are taking us to new horizons of chaos and parliamentary confusion that nobody's ever seen before at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a speaker's ever been thrown out. I mean, they were really making history here. The other sort of thing that has been notable about this mess have been the tactics of pro-Jordan forces. And we don't know who specifically is doing it, but the death threats. Representatives Marionette Miller, Meeks, Drew Ferguson, they both got death threats for not voting for Jordan. You've got other members. Drew Ferguson told Republicans he had to have a sheriff stationed at his daughter's school over threats. Ken Buck has said he's had 4 death threats and gotten evicted from one of his offices in Colorado. I know of other members who've been accused of being communists, but they happen to be Republican conservatives, and some of Cuban-American background, calling them communists. I mean, like, the tactics and even having Sean Hannity's producers pressure people, that also feels unprecedented, and it doesn't even seem to be effective. Your thoughts on that?
Well, this goes back to January the 6th, Joy, because if you fail to renounce and denounce political violence in very clear and explicit terms, it's going to come back to haunt you. So first they come for Vice President Pence and Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, and then they come for Liz Cheney, and they come for Adam Kinzinger, and then eventually they come to you, anybody who does not completely toe the line of the Trump sycophantic MAGA right. And that's where we are now. There will be death threats, there will be intimidation, there will be political threats, there will be calls threatening violence to people's homes, to their offices if they don't toe the line. And of course, Jordan's forces want to now put the pedal to the metal and go forward again tomorrow, thinking this may be the point of maximum fear and intimidation, and they might not be able to recover whatever progress they've been able to make up over the last day. I understand that Steve Bannon has been exhorting his followers to turn up the heat in people's district offices, in their D.C. offices, and so on. But it's giving more Republicans a glimpse of the kind of intimidation and fear tactics that have been unleashed against anybody who stands in the way of Donald Trump and his preferred followers in Congress.
I'm glad that you invoked January 6th, because Rachel Maddow was on with us last night, and she had a very interesting take and theory on why the purpose of all of this, what it may be. Take a listen.
Having Patrick McHenry be named speaker without voting for him does not work in the American system of government. That is not a way out of this. And so sometimes things go slow until they go fast. And one of the things that has happened is that the Republican Party has effectively abolished half of Congress.
And Rachel went on to say that maybe that's the point, that maybe the point is to have no speaker, to have effectively no government, to dismantle the government from within and essentially allow the government to close down, shut down in less than 30 days and fail. What do you make of that?
Well, it goes back to Steve Bannon, who said when the first Trump nightmares began to sick themselves on the American people, we're going to deconstruct the administrative state, we're going to deconstruct the deep state. And of course, what they're really talking about is dismantling the Constitution of the United States. And that's why at every turn, we're just trying to defend essential constitutional functions. We want to pay the bills of America and not default on our creditors. We want to keep the government open and running rather than shut the government down. We want to make sure that the winner of the presidential election actually gets to take office rather than the loser through a series of outrageous tricks and maneuvers and violence. And so this is where we are. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin have set the stage for what we're living through now, which is no fidelity to the Constitution, no commitment to democracy, but rule or ruin. That is the dictum that inspires the extreme right in America. They're either going to rule over all of us or they're going to ruin our opportunity to meet the needs of the people through government.
Yeah, it is pretty frightening. I do want to, while I have you here, since you were on the January 6th committee, give you an opportunity to comment on Sidney Powell pleading guilty to now misdemeanors in the state of Georgia. Your thoughts on that?
Well, there were so many criminal offenses that were committed at so many different levels, at the state level, at the federal level, by a lot of the key participants in these events, that it doesn't surprise me that they will start to plead out in the hopes of escaping real justice and accountability in the process. So there are lots of crimes that are obvious at this point. It's very clear that what was attempted on January 6th was a political coup, and that political coup was backed up by a violent insurrection that drove the House and the Senate out of our offices. But it had been taking place for many weeks and at different levels, and I think that all of these offenses are coming to light. I feel proud of what we did on the January 6th Select Committee, because even though we didn't have the power to prosecute anyone, we did have the power to tell the story, and it's that story that set the factual predicate for the prosecutors to engage in prosecutions all over America now.
It is Friday, the 20th of October of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious is our little Yorkie, and she is also the door girl. And she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Okay, so the French 77s are virtually mixed and poured and ready for your virtual imbibing pleasure. So have at it. We need a few, don't we? And you can only handle a few. In fact, I would suggest like anything more than two might be a little too much. Just giving you fair warning. It may be the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails, but it is also one of the most potent, so take care. Alrighty, the world is still blowing up around us, and it seems like we're doing it ourselves, yeah. So, I'm getting a little perturbed, and just bear with me here, because I know endeavoring into the Israeli-Palestinian issue is fraught with a lot of disagreement and passion. But let me put it this way. I'm getting a little tired of Joe being called Genocide Joe. I'm just, it's starting to bother me, okay? So I just want to let you know. Let's not call Joe Biden Genocide Joe. Any attempt to help an ally means that now we are on the side of genocide? Now, I don't know. Maybe this is some sort of like fourth dimensional chess that Joe is playing. But brokering a deal with the Egyptians to be able to get humanitarian aid into Gaza doesn't sound like genocide to me. I'm just saying. Okay? I know these issues are fraught with passion. Now, let's be clear. If Joe had sat down with Benny Gantz as the leader of Israel, he would have said the exact same thing. Right? So just because he shook hands with Bibi, he also, even though it says like unconditional, did you hear all the conditions he put on? Come on. We expect Bibi to follow the rules of war, international law, and if he doesn't, he will be dealt with accordingly. Those are the conditions. So let's be clear about that. And I still am a little upset. Just bear with me now. Okay. I'm still a little upset about that massacre at that peace festival. That these MFers videoed on their GoPros while they did it. And we're supposed to just forget that. Bring that up and we're on the side of genocide. Give me a break. Now, if it was me, I would go in, and I don't care how many thousands they are. I know how hard it was here in our own country, going after several thousand insurrectionists. But a crime has been committed, a crime against humanity, murder, and all of that we've heard, the heinousness of it, the brutality, just the sick, psychotic BS. So let's go arrest them, investigate them for their crimes, and go and arrest these people. Why is that so hard? Do we need to level whole blocks to do it? I don't think so. That's just me. Oh, but we can't do that in a time of war? Yeah, we can. Because then I would just say, maybe don't call it a war, call it a police action, and take police action. Arrest these terrorists, bring them to trial, and if they turn out not to be the people that we thought they were, then they're let go. If it's proven that they took part in these crimes against the world, then sentence them. Now, I know in this country, we have been known to level whole blocks to go after people that, broke the law. But maybe we cannot do that this time. That would be nice. Okay, so I'm a romantic, and that's never going to happen. Because how difficult would that be? I know it would be very difficult. But I probably would be greasing a few palms over there in Gaza. And I know that's wrong because, people have vendettas against and personal grudges and, will turn in people they don't like instead of people who are actually, guilty of these crimes. Whew. You know what else we're hearing? And I got to take this all with a grain of salt, too. Okay? But we are hearing a few Gazan civilians made the trek over how many miles? 10 miles, 12 miles? To ransack and loot the houses and kibbutzes of the people that got massacred while they're still laying on the ground. Some in cases being charred dead in their safe rooms. I know. Fog of war. Okay. Kind of makes me mad. I'm just saying. I don't like the idea of a bunch of 20-year-olds getting massacred at a music festival for peace. People working for humanitarian agencies bringing humanitarian aid to Gaza. Massacred. Why? Because of the Prime Directive. Has anybody made any kind of constitutional endeavor to take that decree out of the Hamas, whatever it is, their document, their manifesto. Kill all the Jews. I'm just saying. Maybe somebody should, excise that out and become a little bit more, I don't know, less genocidal, shall we say. Kill all the Jews. I know I might be exaggerating it a little bit. But pretty much says right there, kill all the Jews. I don't like that. And then, while we're putting up with this BS of a bunch of, idiots calling Joe Genocide Joe, we've got the Heritage Foundation saying, we're not going to take any Palestinian refugees. And they mean people from Gaza. We're not going to allow them to get out of harm's way. And the Heritage Foundation is really bringing up, a very long heritage of the United States of pretty much not letting refugees come here. Look what we did to the Jews. You can't come here. We can't trust you. You won't assimilate into our way of life. And what is our way of life? Jesus. Hypocritical Protestants speaking in tongues? Well, that's not all by any means. But, hey, they seem to be holding the power now. Yeah, Heritage Foundation. Goose-stepping Nazis. I told everybody. Jeez. Give these MAGA Nazis an inch and they're going to blitzkrieg, more than a mile. More than a mile. Many, 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 many miles. All right. It's Friday, isn't it? Yes, it is. So why don't we give you a rundown of what we have in store for you here in the rest of this curated aspect of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Why don't we? Well, yes, at the top, that was Jamie Raskin laying it out of how the tactics of the extreme right. That's, a nice way of calling them MAGA Nazis. Their in their speaker fight is to rule or ruin. We get to rule or we're going to break everything. And we see what they're doing to democracy itself. Okay? And if you want to call it a republic, they're also destroying a republic. All right. On the rest of the menu, Maryland police are investigating the fatal shooting of a circuit court judge. Seems like that's been going around lately. A state of emergency was issued in a northern New York county following a major water main break that has left tens of thousands without water. And the Department of Justice secured a $9 million settlement with Ameris Bank over redlining in Florida. I bet that's not the only bank doing that. After the break, we moved to the chef's table where a Dutch court convicted a man who projected an anti-Semitic message on the Anne Frank Museum. And the EU demanded Meta and TikTok detail their efforts to curb disinformation from the Israel-Hamas war. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across the page to the left from that chat room link that is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, that is near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills. All kidding aside, we joke around a lot about this, but this is quite serious business. Though the bulk of how we pay for this powerhouse resistance does come out of our own wallets, we would be unable to do it without your help. So if you could possibly afford to send us what you might spend on, I don't know, how about an espresso type coffee drink, for instance? If you could send those funds our way once a month, it really does help. And I should let you know, there have been people who have done that for quite some time now, and I cannot tell you how much it helps. So thank you to those of you who have really allowed us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended. And a little pre-thanks to those of you who might be in a position to help us sometime in the future, because it really would help. And thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, I think Blue Sky, I sent Tom those invites. But regardless, you can find us on those social media platforms by going to @Netroots Radio. And I mentioned Tom because he takes care of those, and thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X, okay? I could call it Shitter, and sometimes I do. But it'll be Twitter for now. And anyway, you can also find me on Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Instagram, Tumblr, what's the other one? Oh, Facebook. Yeah, you know, I'm around, but you can find me at Justice Putnam, or just simply Justice Putnam. You know how it works. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, so there you can find the actual articles that have inspired us each of these special days. And if you follow my social media feed, you'll have easy access to those links because the links are all there. Go do it. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, really wherever podcasts can be found. You just can't find them on Stitcher. Damn it. Okay. Let us now tuck into this first offering, which is a bit maddening now. And this has been updated since last night when I found this. And it did say it would be an updated story, so they have updated it quite a bit. And it is by Julie E. Green from the Herald Mail out in Maryland. The man wanted in connection with the shooting death of Washington County Circuit Judge Andrew Wilkinson was part of a divorce case that was the only matter before the judge yesterday, Thursday, according to the day's court docket. Wilkinson signed an order on Thursday saying there was to be no visitation or contact between Pedro Argot, wanted in connection with Wilkinson's slaying Thursday night, and his children, according to the pretrial judgment in the divorce case. There was also to be no contact between Argot and the children's mother. Well, apparently, he proved the judge correct. Wilkinson was shot later that night in a driveway in the 19100 block of Old Waterford Road, north of Hagerstown. The Washington County Sheriff's Office is asking for help to find Argot, age 49. And then, let's see, he's maybe driving a silver 2009 Mercedes GL 450 displaying Maryland registration plates. I'll go give that to you. Maybe you might run into him, and don't apprehend him yourself. License plate 4EH0408. and that's according to the sheriff's office. The order Wilkinson signed Thursday refers to a 2009 Mercedes that Argot was to make available to his children's mother upon reasonable request to attend necessary shopping or medical or dental appointments for her and the children. The judgment also stated the mother was to have sole use and possession of the family home, and the property was west of Hagerstown, and that Argot was not to enter that property, and he was to pay child support of $1,120 a month for their 4 minor children. Boy, you got off easy on that one. The Maryland judiciary put out a statement this morning, Friday, on the shooting death of Washington County Circuit Judge Andrew Wilkinson. And they talk about mourning his death and wishing the family well. And the Washington County Sheriff's Office released the name of the man suspected in the shooting death of the Circuit Court judge last night. And that, of course, is Pedro Argot, age 49, described as 5 feet 7 inches tall, 130 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Picture they have of him makes him look like a really skinny Clark Kent. Very, very skinny. In fact, even skinnier than Pee Wee Herman. Police are searching for Argot, and anyone with details on his whereabouts is asked to not approach him, but to immediately notify law enforcement. Maryland State Police also said for precautionary reasons they deployed troopers last night, Thursday, to protect judges residing in Washington County. And the courthouse will be open today, but the case docket has been trimmed with few civil matters remaining. A 3-judge panel case that Wilkinson was to chair, of course, has been postponed. Now, this is not the first time that they have had problems in that local circuit where a judge has been attacked. In December of 1989, a package of pipe bombs exploded in Judge John P. Quarterman's third-floor apartment in Hagerstown, and he sustained shrapnel wounds to his right hand and abdomen and partial hearing loss. And no one was ever charged in that bombing, according to a story at the time of Quarterman's death in July of 2012. He was 70 years old. Associated Press staff brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. A state of emergency was issued yesterday, Thursday, in a northern New York county where the Fort Drum U.S. Army base is located, following a major water main break that has left tens of thousands without water. Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado said 32,000 gallons of drinking water from 6 of the state's regional stockpiles, as well as 11 water tankers, an incident management team, and other staff were deployed to Watertown, a community of more than 24,000 people located more than 170 miles northwest of Albany. Smaller nearby communities have also been affected by the water shortage. Officials said a total of more than 45,000 people have been impacted. Let's see. Watertown Mayor Jeffrey Smith said a 12-foot-long piece of piping from the city's water treatment plant, likely about 50 years old, split late Wednesday night. He said after that, piping is expected to be repaired on Thursday night, but workers will still begin pressurizing the system, and that's a process that could take 24 to 36 hours. Smith warned that more water breaks might occur given the age of parts of their water system. Of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Justice Department has secured a $9 million settlement with Ameris Bank over allegations that it avoided underwriting mortgages in predominantly Black and Latino communities in Jacksonville, Florida, and discouraged people there from getting home loans. The bank denied violating fair lending laws and said it just wanted to avoid litigation by agreeing to the deal, which does not include civil monetary penalties. It's the latest settlement over a practice known as redlining, which the Biden administration is tackling through a new task force that earlier this year reached the largest agreement of its kind in the department's history. Between 2016 and 2021, the Atlanta-based Ameris Bank's home lending was focused disproportionately on mostly white areas of Jacksonville, while other banks approved loans at 3 times the rate Ameris did. The bank has never operated a branch in a majority Black and Hispanic neighborhood, and in 1/3 of those areas it did not receive a single application over a 6-year period, even though other banks did. Redlining has a significant impact on the health and wealth of these communities. Attorney General Merrick Garland said, "Home ownership has been one of the most effective ways that Americans have built wealth in our country. When families cannot access credit to achieve home ownership, they lose an opportunity to share in this country's prosperity," Garland said at a news conference in Jacksonville, announcing the settlement. CEO Palmer Proctor of Ameris Bank, or is it Ameris, which federal officials say has nearly $25 billion with a B in assets and operates in 9 states across the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic, said in a statement, "We strongly disagree with any suggestions that we have engaged in discriminatory conduct." Proctor said the bank cooperated with the investigation and reached the agreement in part because we share the department's goal of expanding access to home ownership in underserved areas. Oh, really? Are you finally going to give a loan to someone other than white? And that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, no matter how abrupt that was, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Gimme Shelter. In 2021, actor-comedian Siobhan Fallon Hogan, you remember the person who played Vincent D'Onofrio's character's wife in Men in Black, who was just 3 types of great in a very small scene? Yeah, that's her. So in 2021, Hogan released Rushed, a drama she wrote, produced, and starred in along with Robert Patrick and her son Peter Hogan, who was also a producer, and had it directed by Danish director Vibeke Muyasa, edited by Sabine Emiliani, and cinematographed by Matthias Schubert. So she's just released Rushed and figures now she can rest. She lies down and gets this idea about the intersection of 3 broken people, a prison warden, a death row prisoner, and a has-been, almost never was country singer. She writes it in 3 weeks, gets the crew back together, and 2 years later, Shelter in Solitude is in theaters. Setting the film at the beginning of lockdown, Fallon takes full advantage of how COVID provides the ideal backdrop for stories about companionship and about how people can and must affect each other. Also, lockdown is a money-saving gift as it cuts down on the number of extras you need to make a scene believable. This movie so stayed with me, and on reflection, I think it might be right-leaning, maybe libertarianish, because in it, society's rules and demands leave people financially and relationshipally impoverished, while family connections and Christian creeds, specifically Catholic creeds, draw them together. However, the movie isn't preachy and has an underlying compassion which is compelling, and you can tell that in Hogan, the actor is not far from the writer, because she makes such rich characters that allow people to do good work. Shelter in Solitude is exactly the type of small good movie that the Motion Picture Academy is not going to watch, which is a shame because as much as the Oscars are about quality, and how much they are or aren't is something we can argue, this film should at least get some serious consideration. Oh well, you can still appreciate it. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
For Science Quickly, I'm Christopher Intagliata. Indonesia's more than 17,000 islands contain the largest expanse of tropical rainforest in Southeast Asia, and they're teeming with biodiversity.
These forests are just incredibly rich.
Conservation scientist Eric Mayerd has worked for more than 3 decades in these forests. He heads up the scientific consulting company Borneo Futures.
Of course, it's hot and sweaty and humid, but there's so much diversity in these forests. There's bird calls everywhere.
Everywhere you look, you see life.
Bill Lawrence is a tropical ecologist at James Cook University in Australia.
The forests are just festooned with plants and animals and birds and everything just chirping away, and it's just this giant bastion of life.
That life is on the brink because Lawrence says Indonesia has an incredible concentration of the world's endangered and critically endangered species.
It's sort of an incredible, magical place in one sense, but it's also a place that's greatly imperiled right now.
And then there's another sort of peril, one facing the scientists who do conservation work there. That's the topic of a recent letter Lawrence and Mayerd published in the journal Current Biology. Writing with a couple Indonesian colleagues, they warn that conservation science in the island nation is under threat.
We were seeing colleagues and researchers that we knew and respected that were being essentially booted out of Indonesia,
including Mayerd himself.
We published a critical letter in an Indonesian newspapers where we questioned the Ministry of Forestry and Environment's statements about growing orangutan populations. And we said, look, we've been looking at this problem for over 30 years and orangutan populations are simply not growing. All 3 species of orangutans are in continuous decline.
He says the government responded quickly by banning him and his colleagues from doing research in the country. A leaked letter from the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry instructs the country's national parks not to work with Mayerd or approve his research requests, saying his writings could, quote, discredit the government.
And it's really made it much more difficult for us to collaborate with foreign and Indonesian scientists working on conservation issues in Indonesia.
We reached out to the Indonesian government, but have not, at time of publication, received a response. The scientist's paper in Current Biology points out that Indonesia is far from the only country suppressing scientific work. They cite examples from Turkey, Sweden, the US, and Australia too. But in a nation like Indonesia, with so much biodiversity on the brink, the stakes for endangered species are especially high.
If everyone says that orangutan populations are growing and no one is in a position to question that, then orangutan populations are growing.
And that perception becomes reality, he says.
Without independent science, the government and other groups can completely change the narrative and generate fake realities around what is happening.
And in a world where fake realities have been used to discredit life-saving vaccines or to undermine free and fair elections, it's easy to imagine how fake realities about the state of Indonesia's forests could have very real repercussions for critically endangered species. Science Quickly is produced by Jeff Delvicio, Talika Bose, Kelso Harper, and Corinne Leong. Our theme music was composed by Dominic Smith. Don't forget to subscribe to Science Quickly wherever you get your podcasts. For more in-depth science news and features, go to scientificamerican.com. And if you liked the show, give us a rating or review. For Science Quickly, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work. Sorry, I'm late. Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by-in for the people. As states, counties, and municipalities prepare for elections in November and next year's presidential race, reports have surfaced of short-term poll worker shortages in Iowa, Indiana, Kentucky, Texas, and several other states. The election system in most precincts around the U.S. relies on older volunteers and stipend workers who have flexibility of time to help out. Many experienced poll workers stepped back during the pandemic, citing health concerns, and extraordinarily low unemployment rates makes it harder to recruit short-term workers. Fear is also a factor. In an April 2023 survey by the Brennan Center for Justice, 51% of local election officials said they were somewhat concerned or very concerned about threats, harassment, or intimidation. 21% of local election officials who started after 2020 said they are very or somewhat unlikely to serve in the 2024 cycle. To counteract this loss, a coalition of veterans organizations created Vet the Vote to mobilize retired veterans to assist as poll workers. Another group of media companies, democracy groups, and advocacy organizations launched Power the Polls in 2020, recruiting 275,000 poll workers for the 2022 midterms. If you can serve your community as a poll worker, contact your local election office or visit AmericanDemocracyMinute.org to find out more. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1926. That was the day that one of the great labor leaders in U.S. history, Eugene V. Debs, died in Elmhurst, Illinois. In 1894, Debs gained national attention when his American Railway Union launched a boycott in support of the striking workers of the Pullman Palace Car Company. The strike and the boycott were crushed by federal troops and a federal court. Debs served 6 months in jail for his role in the boycott. Later, Debs would again go to jail for standing up for his beliefs. He was convicted for speaking out against U.S. involvement in World War I. He was among the founders of the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World, in 1905. He ran as a socialist for President of the United States 5 times, receiving nearly 1 million votes running his campaign from a prison cell in 1920. In 1891, Debs wrote an article for the Locomotive Fireman's magazine titled The Unity of Labor. His words stand as an eloquent case for worker solidarity. Debs wrote, quote, "If working men were united in sympathetic bonds, if a bricklayer could comprehend the fact that he is dependent on the hod carrier, if the locomotive engineer could grasp the fact that he is dependent on the locomotive fireman, the interdependence of labor would at once constitute a bond of union, a chain whose link, forged and fashioned to hold working men in harmonious alliance, would girt them with a defense in every time of trouble and resist invasion, though assailed by all the plutocrats that ever cursed the earth." Debs spent his life trying to bring about this harmonious alliance of working people and standing up for the causes of peace and justice. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the low to mid-80s. Foggy conditions currently, with a few clouds later on this morning that will become partly cloudy this afternoon, and we will again expect mist, heavy mist, and reduced visibility at times because of that fog. Winds are light and variable, and then partly cloudy skies overnight. Lows in the low 50s, winds light and variable, and then more clouds and sun tomorrow with highs plummeting to the mid-70s. Winds will be out of the west-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And we will be having rainy conditions building overnight tomorrow night, and then looking about 1/3 to 1/2 inch of rain on Sunday. So we'll see how that goes. Ragweed pollen is rated moderate here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index is in the moderate range at 55 parts per million because people are allowed their burn piles of garbage. Ick. And the daytime UV index is moderate at level 3. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.97 inches. Visibility is at a half mile. And relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 63 degrees and cloudy with an active statement for potential disruption due to rain. Paris is 64 with showers in the vicinity, also with a disruption due to rain. Rome is 78 and partly cloudy with a potential disruption due to heavy wind. Kabul is 55 and fair. Kyiv is 55 and cloudy. Hong Kong is 76 degrees and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 70 degrees and cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 71 with a rain shower. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 55 degrees and cloudy. And New York, New York is 63 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy with a small craft advisory. And that is your weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Cal of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. A court in Amsterdam sentenced a Polish-Canadian national to 2 months in prison on Thursday yesterday for projecting a message alluding to an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory onto the Anne Frank House Museum. Robert Wilson was charged with insulting a group and inciting discrimination for using a laser projector in February to display the words "Anne Frank invented the ballpoint pen" on the site of the Canal House where the Jewish teenager hid with her family during the Holocaust. The text refers to a debunked claim that Frank's famed diary is a forgery, because the ballpoint pen wasn't invented, apparently, by then. Given the great symbolic significance of Anne Frank's diary for the commemoration of the persecution of the Jews, this statement can be regarded as a form of Holocaust denial, the court wrote in its decision. Having already spent more than 2 months in pre-trial detention, Wilson has already served a sentence. He was not in the courtroom for the verdict. The judges ruled that Wilson had projected the scrolling text from a van parked across the canal from the building in Amsterdam, which now houses the Anne Frank Museum. A recording of the stunt was posted on an anti-Semitic Telegram channel, but the court found there wasn't enough evidence to convict him of distributing the images. Wilson denied the charges, claiming he was in Amsterdam for a weekend getaway with his girlfriend and daughter. He told judges during a hearing 2 weeks ago that he wasn't even aware of where the Anne Frank house was. Prosecutors said Wilson was a prominent member of the neo-Nazi Goyim Defense League. He is facing charges of assault and shouting homophobic slurs at a neighbor while he was living in the U.S. Poland is also investigating Wilson over an incident in which he allegedly stood in front of the Auschwitz concentration camp holding a sign with anti-Semitic slogans.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Kelvin Chan of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The European Union yesterday, Thursday, demanded Meta and TikTok detail their efforts to curb illegal content and disinformation during the Israel-Hamas war, flexing the power of a new law that threatens billions in fines if tech giants fail to do enough to protect users. The European Commission, the 27-nation bloc's executive branch, formally requested that the social media companies provide information on how they're complying with pioneering digital rules aimed at cleaning up online platforms. It is a prelude to a possible crackdown under the new digital rules, which took effect in August and have made the EU a global leader in reining in big tech. The biggest platforms face extra obligations to stop a wide range of illegal content from flourishing, or face the threats of fines of up to 6% of annual global revenue. The new rules, known as the Digital Services Act, are being put to the test by the Israel-Hamas war. Photos and videos have flooded social media of carnage, alongside posts from users pushing false claims and misrepresenting videos from other events. Brussels issued its first formal request under the DSA last week to Elon Musk's social media platform. And the European Commissioner, Thierry Breton, the bloc's digital enforcer, had previously sent warning letters to the three platforms as well as YouTube, highlighting the risks that the war poses. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Chacun vivait